you so much. Thank you so much, everybody. I have to change my last surprise to seeing Cynthia and Rick because you guys don't know, it's been decades since I've seen them. This is a total surprise. So it blows my mind and I'm super happy.
Super excited to hear you, Vicky.
Oh, this is so great. So let's just take some time for a little bit of meditation practice right now. Um, and what I'd like to offer as a suggestion for the practice is something really, really simple, which is to see if it might be possible for the next several minutes to just make friends with what is. So taking that into mind, and feel free to turn off your video if you would like, to close your eyes, to change position, whatever you need so that it's possible to turn your attention inward and see what's happening. And just as you're sitting in whatever position you're in, checking in with your own body and seeing what you notice. Seeing where there's comfort or discomfort. Feeling where you might feel warm or cool. Just noticing how it feels to be in this body right now. Notice what it feels like to have the body rise and fall with the breath. Does that feel loose and relaxed, or tight, or strained in any way? Just noticing the way it is and seeing if it's possible to just make friends with that. And noticing also anything that's coming into the mind as we sit here together. Thoughts, emotions that arise. It's noticing what's happening right now without any need to change that. Simply taking in the present moment with as much awareness as possible. And just acknowledging that right now, it's like this. So I just switched over to my AirPods, and are you able to hear me okay? Yes? Okay. A little bit of background for why I chose this topic for this talk tonight. And to paint the picture of this background, the year is 2016. I was a Buddhist practitioner. I had done teachers training at Insight Santa Cruz as a Dharma leader and mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher. I had been going into prison for about 5 years at that time. I was leading 2 weekly meditation groups, San Jose Dharma Punks and Rebel Dharma in Santa Cruz. So this practice was a really big part of my life, very foundational. And the 2016 election season came along. And what I saw happening in this country scared me a lot. I was really disturbed by the degree to which I felt that hatred and racism and kind of dehumanizing other people was becoming normalized to a large extent. I felt pretty angry and afraid, and also really helpless because I didn't know what to do about that. I didn't know what I could do about that. And at the time, I was in my professional life working with entrepreneurs from developing countries and really committed to seeing how can we support other countries with access to clean water, access to energy, access to education for girls. And after the 2016 election, I decided to stop all of my teaching activities except for going into prison because that's so deep in my heart, and to stop my other professional activities working in countries outside of the United States and to turn my attention to what was happening here. What I wanted, what my hope was, is that we together could create a more just and equitable and sustainable and compassionate world. And I didn't think that was going to happen through elected officials making it happen. I really believe that those kind of changes really come from people who care about other people, who care about other people, and build community and work for change. So I didn't have any experience in this world, but I started networking and speaking with people and entering into communities and taking actions of various sorts, and sort of found my way as a baby community organizer and political activist. But these are really tumultuous political times, and along with those actions came a lot of frustration and anger and feelings of self-righteousness and other things that didn't really feel that they were in alignment with my Buddhist practice and in alignment with my values. I was really searching for a way that I could take action that also felt in alignment with the values that were most important to me. And what I figured out through that process is that if any of us wants to work towards making the world a better place, it's not hard to find a way to take action. You can look at what the world needs and what your skills are and what you feel moved to act on, and there's something you can do to contribute. So the issue of finding out what to do was much less difficult than trying to find out how to do it, because it's so easy in this process to get caught up in anger and blame and attachment to views and judgment and labeling other people and all of these kinds of poisons that not only harm others, but harm ourselves in the process. So I chose this topic not because I'm an expert on how to integrate Buddhist practice with political rabble rousing, but because I'm a struggler, a long time, deep struggler in this area. It has it has been a journey for me. It has at times caused harm to my own health and my mental and physical health and my overall well-being. But this has been such a rich and valuable practice for me that I'm really excited to share a few of my reflections from what I've learned along the way. I think that, a lot of when I first was kind of stepping into this area of activism, one of the people I reached out to for some guidance was Aya Santusika, who's a Buddhist nun who I had practiced with for quite some time, and she was very involved in the climate movement. And I told her that one of the things that worried me is that when I meet people who call themselves activists or who are very engaged in some kind of movement work, they often seem really angry. And it often seems that in just a casual dinner setting or party situation, tempers could flare, or a lot of anger could arise. And it felt like that's not what I want. I want to take action. I want to see if there are things I can contribute to that can lead to change, to lead to more safety, more justice, more equity, more goodness, so that everyone can thrive. But I don't want to become that. I don't want to become this angry person who can't think of anything else and can't have a casual dinner conversation without a lot of fire and intensity. And she gave me what was the most obvious answer, but also the answer that made me mad because it's just so hard. And it was very simple. It's you do the work and you let go of any attachment to the outcome. That's really bad news, in my opinion. Really bad news. How do you do that? Because everything I had learned in my life is that if you're passionate about it, about anything, if you're trying to work towards a college degree, or you're passionate about some hobby that you have, or passionate about some cause, you just put your whole heart and soul and time and energy into it, and you just grasp for that goal. But to engage in this work in a way that's aligned with Buddhist practice, that grasping is a really serious problem. And yet I didn't know what to do about that. How can you care about something so intensely, but hold it so lightly, as if it's just sitting on your open hand? And that has been a tremendous struggle for me. So tonight I wanted to share two things. One is a Buddhist teaching that I have found really helpful in this regard. There are lots of Buddhist teachings that I feel support me in this work, but this one particular is the teaching of wise intention as part of the Eightfold Path. How do we act? How do we create and act from wise and wholesome intentions? So I want to talk about that teaching a little bit. And then I want to talk about a practice or an exercise that I have done and continue to do that has really been helpful to me, and that I offer to you in the hopes that it could be supportive and helpful to you as you work towards whatever it is that matters to you, whatever brings meaning to the energy that you spend. And that practice I'm going to call feeding your roots. So we'll get to that in a moment. But first, I want to start with the teaching of wise intention, which is really the Buddha said that we need to check for the wholesomeness of our intentions in the things that we do. Our intentions matter. They're not all that matters, but they matter deeply. And because our words and our action arise from our intentions, they pass through our intentions. So if there's some dirty, ugly, poison stuff in our intentions, our actions are going to arise out of that. And that's going to create less wholesome action on our part. So the Buddha offered us three types of intentions that are considered to be wholesome or wise. And those are the intentions of goodwill, of renunciation, and of harmlessness. So the intention of goodwill is really acting with unconditional positive regard for all living beings. That's a very high bar. But there are ways that we can cultivate this, not seeking perfection, but looking at how do we cultivate our own heart and mind's tendency to act with positive regard to others. And one of the most valuable practices for that, in my experience, has been the practice of loving kindness meditation, of wishing ourselves and others well, of the repeating the phrases and the wishes that we may all be at peace, that we may feel safe and strong, that we may live with joy and ease, and that we may be free. And working with the practice of cultivating that sense of goodwill. So in the world of politics and social justice action, I would have to admit that there are some particular elected officials that I have a really hard time cultivating goodwill towards. And one of the ways I have worked on this practice is to get, through a crafty internet search, a childhood photo of a particular elected official that I found particularly problematic. Seeing the face of this 6-year-old who was later to become president of the United States, I saw something different than I saw on the TV news with clenched fists and angry faces. It reminded me that all of us at one time had an innocence, had a desire to be loved and cared for and accepted. And that is still true. There's a lot that gets buried on top of that for all of us. But this practice of cultivating goodwill through loving kindness has been a really useful tool for me in trying to cultivate wiser intentions in my practice. The second kind of wise intention the Buddha offers is renunciation. And I don't know about you, I hear the word renunciation used in Buddhist circles, but in my normal daily life and friends and family, I don't hear that word very often. It has the connotation for me of giving up something, maybe even giving up something you really like. But I like to think of renunciation as freedom from something instead of giving something up. The freedom from something that's weighing me down. I've heard it also described as joyfully giving up what is weighing you down. And this can be a really wholesome intention. I have a very concrete example of this in my own life, is that a couple of years ago, I joyfully gave up Twitter. Twitter was a source of great frustration and outrage for me. It was also highly addictive for me. I could feel myself being drawn to it, and even drawn to the outrage, almost opening it up, looking to be angry, looking to be outraged, looking to find an enemy. And I knew it wasn't good for me, but it was really hard to get rid of. And when I finally got rid of it, when I finally renounced Twitter, I joyfully gave up something that was weighing on me. And it helped me to start looking at what other things are there that are not cultivating the wholesome intentions I'd like to have, but cultivating more anger, more frustration, more separation than I wanted to have. I feel like there's a lot in our culture, especially through media of all types, that's designed to stir us up, designed to outrage us. Um, we're going to spend more time on an app, the more we get an intense emotional reaction for it. And so I know for myself, spending periods of time taking a fast from the news or fast from social media is really essential in being able to stay mindful of my wise intentions. So goodwill, renunciation, or what I would call freedom from goodwill, freedom. And the third of the wise intentions that the Buddha offers is harmlessness. And I think that sometimes this word gets a little bit confused with niceness. Being harmless does not mean being nice necessarily. I think of harmlessness as a kind of fierce love. A fierce love that says, I care about you, I love you, and there is no way that that is acceptable. Of holding someone in positive regard, but also setting boundaries, in speaking up against injustice, in being willing to call out what you believe is wrong. I like the phrase, I like the expression, do no harm, but take no shit. And I think that this integration of harmlessness into political action or social justice advocacy requires a really strong, grounded kind of harmlessness, a kind that doesn't make you a doormat that someone can push down and walk over, but a kind of harmlessness that will stand solidly arm to arm with other people in the community to protect the people behind us. That's the kind of harmlessness that's grounded in a fierce love, doing no harm, but taking no shit. So those wise intentions are, for me, a way of checking myself, a way of looking to myself again and again to say, are these actions I'm taking really grounded in these intentions of goodwill, of freedom, and of harmlessness? So that's all great. It all sounds really nice. It resonates for me. It makes sense to me that yes, these are good intentions to work from. I can use that in my life in a lot of ways. But what happens when those good and wholesome intentions aren't arising? Or what happens when they arise and you get beaten down by the world, you get tired, you get over your limit with something, and you feel the ill will arising, the anger arising, you feeling the need to just put someone in their place instead of holding them with unconditional positive regard. It's not easy. The path isn't easy at all. But there's a practice that I kind of developed for myself out of the teachings from a Bay Area teacher by the name of Christy Tending, who is an activist and a writer and a teacher. And I've learned a lot through some coursework with her about this melding of Buddhist practice and activism or community organizing. And so I sort of modified an exercise of her to help myself. And I call that feeding your roots. And let's see if I can show you this here. So here we have a tree. I generated this using artificial intelligence, which is really wild to me. But so when you see a tree, normally what we see is from the ground up. We see the trunk and we see the the branches, the leaves, maybe the fruits if it's a fruiting tree. But the root system of a tree is amazing. It's complex, it's interconnected, it communicates with other trees. It draws up nourishment, it gives strength and stability to the tree. So I want to share with you about this practice, but keep this visual in mind. Keep this visual in mind. I'm a pretty visual thinker, so it helps me to have a picture. And the way that I think of this tree is I think of the roots as my intentions. I want them to be as wholesome as possible. I think of wholesome as healthy. And when the roots are healthy, the tree is healthy. So with these wholesome intentions or the roots of the tree, it goes up into the trunk. And the trunk I think of as the actions I take. The actions are only as good as my intentions. If I have a weak root system, I'm going to have a pretty puny trunk on my tree. And then remembering the wise guidance of my teacher, Ayasentusika, I think of the branches and the leaves as the fruits of my actions. And I remind myself that they're none of my business. My business is to work on my intentions and to work on my actions and to let go of the fruits of my actions, because that's a sure path to suffering. So in this tree, having these wise intentions, it's hard to keep them and it's hard to cultivate. I find it hard to keep and continuously cultivate these wise intentions. So I have to find a way to feed the roots. I have a house plant. Actually, I didn't intend to mention this, but this is an amazing story. My sister passed away at the age of 16 in 1981. I was 19 years old. And a couple of weeks before she died, she bought this little plant at the store. I was with her. We both bought a plant. It was really small, like a 4-inch pot. I have that plant in my living room. My mom also has that plant at her house because for all of these years, my mom has cultivated that plant and she's taken cuttings, and from those cuttings, I have a plant, and that is that same plant that was purchased and cultivated by my sister before she died. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing to have. And couple of months ago, the plant was looking really puny. It was like faded. It wasn't very green. And I honestly don't take very good care of it. And it's partly because I know my mom has the mother plant. And if anything goes wrong, I can always get more clippings from her and resurrect this. But I used some plant food, which I don't normally do. I mixed it up in water and I poured it on the roots of this plant, and it started thriving. The leaves within days were more green. It was wild. It started sprouting more leaves and really just thriving. And so this practice that I want to offer you is to think about, what is your plant food? What do you have in your life that can feed your roots, that can fortify and nourish your good intentions, your wise and wholesome intentions? I think it's important to focus in this exercise on things that already exist in your life, not a book you need to read or a person you need to meet or something you need to buy, but what already exists in your life that nourishes and strengthens your own wise intentions. And I want to give you some examples. One of the practices for me is mindfulness meditation. Another practice is metta or loving kindness meditation. These are really important. These teachings like wise intention or the Buddhist teachings on wise speech really nourish my good intentions. They help, they strengthen me, they give me a more solid base to work from. but also joyful things strengthen my intention. Playing with my grandkids, playing with my dog, listening to music I love, moving my body, dancing or working out so that whatever stress and frustration and anger is building up inside of me can move through my body and get out. People are obviously huge supports. People who support me and who love me, who will listen to me, who will also give me a sanity check on myself, or kind of be honest with me where they think I'm going off the rails a little bit. I've found something that supports me that's really surprising, which is historical fiction. Because I found out when I read novels about times in history that were really hard, I find out that throughout history, we've struggled and people have been courageous and people have led change. And that has really inspired me. So it's a way to kind of escape from the present reality and ground myself in the past. And that has felt very root developing for me, good food for my roots. Anything that brings inspiration, art or hobbies, whatever outlets that you have. But most of all, above all, for me comes community. And just like the Buddha said that sangha is the whole of the spiritual life, I would never be able to proceed in the way I have without a strong community to support me, not just to strengthen me, but also to check me, to point out to me where I might be really overly attached to my own views and not being open-minded, or to tell me that they think I'm burning myself out and that I need to step away and take some rest, whatever it might be. But community, finding a community within which to take action is essential. I don't even think that this is something that we should ever do by ourselves. It's actually should have some kind of a warning on it. They're not to proceed without community support, because we need this. We need this connection. And the people that we connect with, I feel, are like trees that grow next to each other, and their roots meld together and take strength from one another. When one's not getting enough water, it pulls it through to the other tree. So my encouragement to you is to take some time and to think about how to feed your roots, to think about what brings you joy, what helps you to be more open, to be less afraid, to feel more connected. Not only what can you do, but what can you let go of? Can you let go of being right and simply listen? Can you let go of that one last scroll through the news before you go to bed at night, which is probably the worst thing for sleep that has ever been invented, but something that I find myself sometimes clinging to? Are there things you can let go of? Are there ways you can cultivate goodwill? Are there ways that you can act with harmlessness, not only for others, but also harmlessness for yourself, to take care of yourself in this process? So I want to open up for some conversation and some reflection together. But before I do that, I'd like to just ask you to close your eyes for a moment if you're comfortable doing that. Oscar, not you if you're still driving, obviously. But to just take a moment and think about the goodness of acting from goodwill, from freedom, from harmlessness. And to reflect for just a moment on what nourishes those intentions for you. Who are the people? Is there a movement that inspires you, that gives you hope for change? What brings you joy? What brings you connection? What helps you connect with your heart? What could you be more free from that would allow you to act from wholesome intention? And to remember that what we create within ourselves is what we bring out into the world. So I'll leave you with this thought from Rebecca Solnit. She says, if your activism is already democratic, peaceful, creative, then in one small corner of the world, these things have triumphed. Resistance is, first of all, a matter of principle and a way to live, to make yourself one small republic of unconquered spirit. I'm really grateful for your attention and the invitation to be here tonight. And I'd like to just open it up